Well, thank you for staying with us. Nigerians who love consuming carbonated drinks will henceforth purchase their favorite brands at a more exorbitant price. This is because prices of carbonated drinks have gone up after the federal government imposed a 10 naira per litre tax on them. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed says the new tax was instituted to raise revenue for health-related issues as consumption of sweetened drinks lead to diabetes and other health issues. Reactions have been trailing the decision as organized labor has described the move as a declaration of war on Nigerians. The Nigeria Labour Congress says it will do everything to resist the move and has called on the National Assembly to intervene. Joining me now is strategy consultant Digbo Oyiwole. Good morning. Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Now they say you can't take perhaps any of these carbonated drinks. You have to pay extra.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how you feel about it.
For me, I would say that it's quite consistent with how their policies have been, which is a policy of anything but convenience for people. Because you're telling them that you want to raise money for whatever reason, and that's the first thing your mind goes to.
Their reasons is that they don't Nigerians' health issues, diabetes, and all of that. Isn't that valid in itself, ensuring that you protect the interest of Nigerians? Okay,
so when did it become the responsibility of government to police the health of people?
Their decisions being in the interest of people, shouldn't it?
Allegedly. No, so this is it. Primarily, it is about raising money.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that the excuse of saying that it has to do with
people.
To dissuade. So this is it. There are different things that can harm your health aside from carbonated drinks. Okay, various things out there. Some of them are exorbitantly priced. Some of them are not. But this is what I mean by saying it's consistent with their policies, because either I like it or not, now a lot of people that consume them would have to reduce or cut back, but you also have to understand that there are also people who depend on that sale for their livelihood. So, so those are the people I'm most concerned about, because we also need to remember that the last day of last year they devalued the naira, and it's going to have its own implications. Now you're saying that you're doing this to carbonated drinks, and then you need to understand that an entire value chain will be affected by that. There are people who would say that, okay, you know what, it's so expensive, I won't buy it, and because you don't buy it, somebody doesn't make that sale, and because somebody doesn't make that sale, probably a family doesn't go, probably a family goes hungry that day. So these are the things that we need to understand. But saying that it has to do with their health and all of that, there are other things that they could. Primarily, it's about raising money. Let's leave whatever excuse they're saying. I don't buy it. That's the truth of the matter. There are other things to do to raise money. How about cutting the cost of governance? Isn't that good for our health as well? Let's be factual about these things. They're just trying to be smart about it by saying that, okay, about your health and all of that. It's none of their business, really. It's none of their business. If people want to be diabetic, if we want to be obese, it is their decision. Because in the end, because we have a system of government, doesn't mean that we lose our agency. Because then now you're saying that you want to regulate, or then you're taxing these drinks on the basis of our health. Then what is next? What else are you going to say that you want to tax? Saying that, oh, you feel that you have to intervene because you are the government. That's not the responsibility of government. How about facing the issues of insecurity? Are they facing that squarely? We're not seeing that sense of concern, I would say. So I think that this is quite a sham, and it is one of those things that, like I said, consistent with the policy, saying that it is anything but convenient. They don't make policies. They don't make economic policies that are out to help the lives of Nigerians to be a lot easier or to be convenient in different ways. So I don't see this as
perhaps this is why the organized labor is saying it's a declaration of war on Nigerians, and the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is saying that this move will be counterproductive and lead to revenue loss for government. Government might collect 81 billion revenue from excise duty between 2022 and 2025, but will lose 197 billion naira in the course of doing this. That is what Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Of course,
which is why I alluded to the issue of value chain earlier. Because now, for example, you're a consumer. you get it at the very end. Now, you don't buy from the retailer you buy it from, and then because you don't buy it from that retailer, the person has issues with restocking from their wholesaler, and then the wholesaler isn't making enough sales, and then they can't pay because most of them take it on credit from the distributor themselves, and then the whole ripple effect. And because of that, because people are not buying it as much, then the people who are manufacturing it have to cut back on manufacturing, and don't be surprised if jobs get lost. Because in the factory where you used to have 2 to 3 shifts, and then we're not seeing the productive reason to have 2 to 3 shifts, an entire shift will have to give way. So there's a ripple effect to all of these things. That's why
they are not considering.
Which is why I also said it is consistent with their policies, because there's always been a huge disconnect between their policies, what they say, and the real life implications of it on the ground. Because how they like to run leadership, or their own style of leadership, is an us versus them, where there isn't any form of connectivity between the leaders and the followers. They just sit somewhere and say that, okay, you know what is it that we believe that we can use to generate money? And then they say those things, and they don't bother to look at the numbers. Now, I just read out a couple of numbers saying that it will be more detrimental
to the government.
From a revenue standpoint. So do you want to tell me that they didn't think to run those numbers in the first place before announcing it to the people? Don't be surprised they may have run the numbers, but to them, I don't. And this will be the first time anyway that we're seeing them have policies that are detrimental to the numbers in terms of revenue. So the question is, what are you then doing? What's the point of this? Is it targeted at certain brands, or what is the point exactly of this? If in the end, from a revenue standpoint, you're still going to lose, and then you know, like the people that are still going to buy it are going to buy it. The people that have already stocked it in their homes, the people that have it. So there are people that also need to have a lot of it because of some form of diabetes they have, because they have low blood sugars. There's some people that need to take 2 to 3 bottles of these carbonated drinks on a daily basis. Have you accounted for them as well?
Right, and there are those who feel that perhaps if they are going to, if there's an excise on carbonated drinks, placing aside alcoholic drinks, that people are still consuming it anyway. So it's still for them, it's their choice at the end of the day. But there are those now calling for the National Assembly to look into this matter and make certain amendments. And I'm wondering if you think that is the way to go, or to have a conversation with stakeholders like the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, who are saying, look at the figures closely. You will be at the losing end.
Okay, so the question now is, who is going to initiate that conversation? Is it the government that didn't even bother to consult you in the first place to have the conversation, to say that, okay, you know, we're looking at considering this? Because in the end, leadership, you can't say that you're in a position of leadership and then your style of leadership is devoid of communication, which is their style of leadership. It isn't possible. It doesn't work that way, because what they like to do is they announce all these things, and then when there's a backlash, then they start calling stakeholders to the table. That isn't how to run government.
Right. How
about you call these people in the first place, have the conversations, have all the kinks ironed out, dot your I's, cross your T's, and see that it is ironclad. So by the time you announce these policies, these other stakeholders you're talking about will then throw their weight behind you, and then the people will understand that, okay, you know what, they consulted the people who are the actual stakeholders, and these are the reasons why they were able to do it. Now, these stakeholders, especially in the private sector, will be able to explain a lot more to the people than the government will, because either elected or not, there's a huge distrust with government. But if you have private stakeholders come out to say that, you know what, this and this and this are the benefits, then certain people would say that, okay, you know what, I may consider this, it may sound like a good idea. Mind you, there are people that you would never change their mind.
Absolutely.
Even if you say that you'll be bringing a bag of rice to their homes every single day, or that you are able to identify or outline the benefits to them. There's some people that you'll never change their minds. But how about you change the minds of a lot of people? Because in the end, you can't say that you're leading people and then en masse people aren't really following, because there's a huge distrust with how you engage with them. So how about they have those conversations in the first place, which is something we have always complained about with this government. But what we keep hearing is, oh, it's not their style of governors to communicate or to say this and say that. And then we're asking, so what are you doing there exactly? Because I'm glad that we're out of the conversation or the era of body language. even though that is still what we're getting to see these days. But how about you communicate, and you communicate effectively? Because in the end, even with effective communication, a lot of things still get lost in translation, translation and comprehension. But how about you even try to communicate? Because in the end, if you really, like they say, if you rate somebody or if you rate a group of people, if you hold them in any form of regard whatsoever, you would do them at least the courtesy of a conversation.
Absolutely.
Not after the fact, then expecting them to come to the table and then ring their fingers with their hands and say that, okay, you know what, this is not how to go. And but for me, like I said, still consistent with the style of government. In other areas, we have seen them act this way, and personally, I wasn't so surprised.
But we've always been speaking about creating a conducive environment for businesses to thrive and to also, you know, encourage other businesses outside of the country so that we can, you know, boost our foreign direct investment. And now we are having things like this. Now we've seen, even in some years back, we saw how some brands had to move outside the country because of decisions like this. They went to other African countries, and I'm wondering the impact on businesses. Where does this leave us? Are we really paying attention to what we are doing, to the things, the decisions we are making, and how it is impacting businesses and not allowing businesses to thrive?
I don't believe those are fundamental factors that they put into consideration, our government. Because if it were, there are a lot of policies in the past, including this one, that you would have taken a second look at and said that, okay, you know what are, so for every decision, even as a human being, you consider the implications. What are the short-term implications? What are the long-term implications? Short-term gains, short-term losses, long-term gains, long-term losses. The question is, I don't believe that they analyze their policies or the decisions based on those parameters at the very least, on the fundamental level now. Because if they did, I believe that they would have been able to see the implications and to weigh the pros and the cons and say that the cons are more than the pros. For me, that is how I've always seen them run the system of government, because you say that you're trying to generate this and then you're losing that. And then we always say that we're broke. And then every other month there is some loan that we're trying to get or that we're begging the National Assembly to approve. And yes, you asked me a question about the National Assembly the other time. And National Assembly, I'm sorry, I don't see them doing anything about this. Because so far, this particular National Assembly, they've been very complicit with the executive. In terms of all the in terms of these harmful policies and these things that Nigerians keep questioning the sensibilities behind them. And we keep asking, what is the primary function of the National Assembly? They
are meant to serve the interests of the people.
Do they understand why they are there? Because in the end, they are even the front line or the first people who are there to represent the people at that level and then engage the executive and other branches of the government to say that, you know what, this is what my people are saying. I represent a constituency. Because a lot of them seem to forget that they are there because they represent a group of people. Some of them believe that they just got there. I don't know, because I think maybe another election cycle is around the corner. So maybe that's when they remember that they have constituents. Because in the last couple of years, how many of them have had constituency meetings? How many of them have been able to commission projects?
Well, they will tell you that they went back to their constituents recently.
To do what? To campaign for the next election or to communicate what?
Did they talk about the issues bordering on the direct or indirect primaries?
So this is it. Most of the time when you have them, the few of them that go back to their constituencies, they go there to talk, they don't go there to listen.
Okay.
So what's the point of a constituency meeting when they don't go there to listen? Because you are there to serve.
Right.
So you're there to get feedback. That's the primary responsibility of a constituency meeting. To listen, to get feedback from the people that have sent you. But the people
can also hold them to account because they put them there.
Exactly.
Also should demand that they listen.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is something that we have also not been seeing, and we've talked about that here time and time again. But I would always say that people are quite jaded in terms of having to say that we're holding them accountable because you have some of them. The other day we saw a video this past week of someone in the southeast, someone that represented the people,
who was angry.
His constituent
threw a fit. The constituent said he shouldn't contest or recontest.
Recontest. And it's through a fit, an adult. Because what I expected was he will have been able to take that feedback and then have a conversation with him and then have to convince him so that, okay, you know what, these are the likely challenges that I faced. How about you give me another shot? And then we can see how this works. Because in the end, yes, he was speaking for a group of people, but that wasn't going to be the decider of the next election. Right. But how about you have a conversation with him? So he said that at various levels, that has been the style of governance that we've had in this country. And I would say that that is the reason why we're where we are today. Because we don't bother to get adequate feedback from the people that they're serving to say that, okay, you know what, this is how I want to be served. They just say, okay, this is how we want to serve you. Well, not serving anyway, because that's not their mentality, but they'll say, this is how we want to rule you, and then people say, no, that's not how we want it. So there's that gap, that vacuum has always been there, and on a daily basis, it keeps expanding, and I think it is quite unfortunate. But
the Manufacturers Association are really interesting on having perhaps a win-win situation with regards to this. Something for them has to be done. We cannot just leave this decision by government like this.
Of course.
Can there be a win-win situation at the end of the day? And if there would be, what would it look like?
So from the side of the government, they'll tell you a win-win is telling you that it's from 10% to maybe 5%. And the question is, adding it in the first place is the challenge. So I believe that they were also counting on stakeholders to come to the table or to request to come to the table and then have a conversation. Don't be surprised by the end of maybe next week or by the end of this month, and then you hear that, okay, that they had a conversation and then they appear to be very reasonable, and then they say, no, it's not going to be 10%, it's going to be 5% or it's going to be 7.5%. The question is, should it be there in the first place? Is that a priority? Is that immediate priority to raise funds, whatever purpose you're trying to raise funds for? So that for me is, so I'm not sure where the win-win is going to come from, because either we like it or not, the government won't really be losing from their own perspective. Now, we are saying it that they'll be losing a lot of revenue. Are they saying it from that perspective?
They are not saying it.
They're not saying it from that perspective.
The Manufacturers Association has said that.
They've said it, and then I believe that they will tell them again. But the question is, should they just be hearing about it from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria? That's why I asked earlier that did they run the numbers before making the final decision that this is the way to go. So I think it is going to be quite sad if the first time or when they're really considering that part of the conversation is when they're having the conversation with Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, or maybe when they've said it now, they read it on the front pages of the newspapers, or maybe while we're having this conversation. Because for me, that tells me that you are ill prepared, and that is something that we are seeing branch out from various parts of our government and our leadership. So the question is, what system of leadership are you using to govern over 180 million people? What system are you using? Are you being careful? Are you being analytical? Are you using the numbers? Are you using data?
Well, we know how we are with data in this part of the world, that our data management and data gathering is somewhat poor. So
yes, but I'll believe that at the level of government, that they have a lot of access.
They do have access.
They have access. So the question is, what are they doing with that access? Or is it just access that is only convenient for maybe when they want to clamp down on certain people, or maybe when they want to target certain people? But when it is about using those numbers or the data or that access and the influence to add it to having constructive policies, to having progressive policies, we don't see them throw their weights behind that access and throw their influence around. So then again, I ask, what style of leadership are they practicing? That's if they're even practicing any form of leadership anyway.
Well, we do hope that there would be some level of win-win situation for Nigerians, especially those who are in this part of the world, in Lagos, who love partying, and carbonated drinks are part of this.
Yes,
it's going to be
it's
difficult.
It's a part of life. It's a part of the events circle, and like I said, the entire value chain is being threatened right now.
Right. We must leave the conversation here now. Strategy consultant Dikbo Oyewole, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.